Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, I've got some Hong Kong horror for you. Imprint Asia have just released their latest three movies, 18, 19 and 20 in the Imprint Asia series, Shaw Brothers Horror Collection Volume 1. And they are weird and wonderful bangers. Totally mad films. And I've seen a number of mad films in my time. I was going to Grindhouse cinemas in the 70s. I've seen weird films. But these three from the 1970s and the 1980s kind of renewed my love of weird, transgressive 70s and 80s horror cinema. By the way, Imprint did not send me these. I bought them myself. They're on special at the moment on the Imprint website, and I'll post a link in the description of this video. If you like it, I recommend you get it. So there's the front. Great packaging as always. There's your top, your two sides, and there is the back. I've got to make sure the light doesn't reflect on these. Of course, we also get the card with all of the details of the extras on it. I'll go through them myself, but there's the card. I've got a bit of a light problem here, so please bear with me. I binged these three films a couple of days ago, and I was delighted by them. It took me a little while to get into them because the way they're paced is different than it would be were they an American or an English horror film. And there are some inclusions in these horror films that are just next level WTF. Let's start with the first one from 1976, so you know it's good. The Oily Maniac. How do you describe the Oily Maniac? A legal assistant turns into a monster to get revenge against people he doesn't like. Basically, that's it. I'll read you the blurb from the Imprint website. I just have to go like this to read it all. So bear with me. Legal assistant Shen Yuan follows the directions of an ancient spell, hoping to defend his lifelong love, Yue Yun Ba. He digs a hole, climbs into the thick liquid he uncovers in the hole after reciting a spell, and quickly transforms into an oily monster, tracking down criminals and leaving behind a trail of destruction. Will the identity of the Oily Maniac be revealed? Yes, ultimately it is. It says fans of the Blob, Swamp Thing, and the Greasy Strangler will love this insane, messy trip. I didn't like The Greasy Strangler. It's one horror movie that I thought was trying too hard. But The Oily Maniac is something very different. There is the back of it. Inside, we have The Oily Maniac on the disc and a picture from the movie with The Oily Maniac on it. Now, the other thing it doesn't mention about Shen Yuan is he had polio when he was a kid, so he walks with crutches and he has a disability, and people treat him badly because of his disability. Women don't want to be with him because he has a disability. Men mock him because he has a disability. But when he transforms into the Oily Maniac, he doesn't have that problem. He's as nimble as a parkour expert. He can jump up the side of buildings. He can transform into an oil slick and slither under doorways and up walls. No limitations to this guy. He can get shot by bullets, get limbs and his head cut off, and he will regenerate them. Kind of like Venom, but more Venom. In fact, this movie could have been one of the inspirations for the comic book Venom. The other thing about this movie, like the other two movies, is lashings of gratuitous female nudity.
Nasty substances.
There's a lot of boobage in this one, and in the other two as well. And the other two get even more revealing than the Oily Maniac. The Oily Maniac costume itself is kind of weird. It's got a couple of light bulbs behind the eyes and artificial teeth. And the rest of the suit looks like basically a really cheap suit that somebody has covered in wax and oil and gunk. And the other weird thing about it is when Shen Yuan wants to transform into the Oily Maniac, he's got to cover himself in some kind of oil. At one stage, there are people repairing a road at night time, and he jumps into a vat of hot bitumen to turn into the Oily Maniac. In another scene, which is set in a coconut processing factory where they make coconut oil, He covers himself in coconut oil. So basically anything oily is what he needs to transform into the Oily Maniac. There's a lot of wire work and kind of kung fu action where the Oily Maniac is fighting various people. There are some innocent people who are killed, mostly women who are having illicit affairs. And innocence, of course, is a relative thing. But I don't think if you're shagging your boss, you really deserve to be killed in the car by an Oily Maniac. Nonetheless, people are. And also, Shen Yun is not a nice guy. You would consider him an incel now. He's a toxic guy. He lusts after Yue Yang Ba, but she's not interested in him. She's got an affair going with another guy who ultimately betrays her. But still, she is, no means no. And when you're not interested, your friends are. That's it. But he doesn't accept that because he is who he is. So the anti-hero you've got in the movie is not an admirable person from a modern point of view. And that makes it kind of interesting as well. It's directed well. The special effects, particularly when he turns into an oil slick, could be considered laughable, but they are 1970s Hong Kong action film special effects. They're not going to be brilliant, but they're going to convey the message, convey the idea of a man turning into an oil slick well enough for the audience to accept it. You can get picky about it from a modern point of view. We have CGI now. We have a half a century more computer technology to play with and a half a century more special effects technology for film to play with. So being churlish about the special effects in a 1960s or 1970s movie is just pointless. But this one was a lot of fun. Of the three, though, for me, it's the least of the three. But it is a good gateway to start with. So you get your head into the space and into the movie-making rhythms of this particular kind of Hong Kong horror action film. And like the other two, it has quite an abrupt ending. There's no cuddling the audience at the end of the action. It's just everything ends, people in need to die, cut to the credits. You just got to accept that with these films. The extras on the Oily Maniac are, of course, it's 1080p, it's a Blu-ray. Maniacal Memories, interview with actor Jack Long from 2025. Oil and Slaughter, an interview with Ricky Baker, creator of Eastern Heroes magazine from 2025. A Slippery Story, an interview with filmmaker Callum Waddell, and a trailer in Mandarin. Then the next one, which is mad as hell. It's got touches of Taxi Driver and it's got touches of Death Wish. It's got people bonking corpses in a spiritual sense. Their essence floats up and bonks with a rotting corpse. Seeding of a Ghost. This one is weird and deeply weird. In it, the protagonist is a taxi driver and his wife is a croupier at a casino. And she gets seduced by a wealthy man who's one of the gamblers and basically cucks the taxi driver. She has an argument with her lover because she wants him to leave his wife and marry her. He says no. So she gets out of his car at night and starts walking down to a phone box and she's going to call her husband, the taxi driver, to pick her up. But she gets interrupted by a couple of guys in a sports car who kidnap her and take her to an abandoned mansion where one of them assaults her and the second one's going to assault her. But she runs away, falls down a flight of stairs, out of a window and impales herself on some spikes and dies. Her husband is not pleased by this. He has already been cursed by a black magician who he hits with his taxi early on in the movie. And the black magician says, your life's going to be cursed, your family's going to be cursed, you're going to be in trouble. And so he goes back to the black magician and says, I want to get revenge on the people who killed my wife, and I need your help to do it. And the black magician goes, okay, for whatever reason. And so things start getting very nasty. Then there are three guys he goes after, the two guys who chased his wife in the red sports car, plus her lover. And he ultimately gets revenge on all three of them, though there is a high price. Part of the revenge involves the black magician and the taxi driver disinterring the wife and taking her to an altar in the black magician's temple. And she's not in a good condition there. She's basically a decaying corpse. And so there's a whole bunch of different things that they do. And I'm not going to do spoilers on them there. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, pretty much. But They go totally to town and get their revenge. There is a lot of nudity, particularly at the front end of the movie. Lots of transgressive stuff. And this one being a 1980s movie, they reveal more than they did in the 1970s one. There are things like gratuitous shower scenes, for instance, and gratuitous frolicking on a bed kind of scenes. Nothing full on, nothing X-rated, but quite transgressive for a Hong Kong movie at the time. On the Seeding of a Ghost, the extras are Ghosts and Ghouls, critic James Mudge on Seeding of a Ghost from 2025, and he gives a good context on why Shaw Brothers started doing these racy, very graphic horror movies at the time. There were economic reasons why they were doing it to try to keep the studio going. And Seeding of a Trend, the birth of Hong Kong splatter cinema, an interview with filmmaker Callum Waddell. So good extras on those two. Seeding of a Ghost, though, is wild. As the spells get more and more elaborate, both the black magician and the husband, the taxi driver, start getting physically affected and physically altered by the spells they're casting. And that makes it really interesting too. Special effects are very Hong Kong horror of the time, but they're used in an imaginative way and they're used in a different way, and it works. Third movie, Sex Beyond the Grave, which I never knew was an option, but apparently it is, from 1984. This one has a bunch of different tonal shifts and a bunch of subplots which ultimately pay out. But for a lot of the film, you're going, how do these three things match up? The first one is during World War II. A beautiful woman and her husband and her child are fleeing from a Japanese general who wants her. They flee to a mansion called the Tao Tao Mansion and are taken in by the owner of the mansion, but he shops them to the Japanese general. The Japanese general then kills the husband and the child and assaults the woman, who is later killed by somebody else. She comes back as a ghost and she's haunting the descendants of the person who betrayed her. So that's the setup for the first bit. The second part of the movie is a sleazy young man who is ultimately the descendant of the person who betrayed the woman at the start of the film, who's addicted to gambling. He has a lovely wife. His brother-in-law and sister-in-law live nearby. His brother-in-law is a mycologist, a scientist dealing with mushrooms, and that couple have a child, a young boy. The sleazy gambler is given a good luck altar by a blind Buddhist priest, and he worships at the altar and suddenly gets very lucky at playing cards. He makes some money. He has a fling with a European stripper, which is quite full on for a movie of that time. And ultimately, he does the wrong thing and his luck flips and he gets in debt to a whole bunch of loan sharks. And he has just inherited the abandoned mansion and he has to sell it. And he sells it to his brother-in-law and sister-in-law, who move in with a young child into the mansion. The young child is kidnapped by the ghost and taken down a well into an afterlife or into a hell. And the parents spend a lot of the rest of the movie trying to get their son back. They get the cops involved. They eventually get a whole bunch of Buddhist priests and things like that involved to save them. There's all sorts of poltergeist activity in the house. And then the movie ends when everybody thinks that things are okay. The spirits level up to 11 and start doing some really full-on crazy stuff. And the whole lot goes to hell, literally. Body horror, all sorts of weird and horrible stuff happens. And then, as it completes, cut the credits. I'll give you the blurb on Imprint's website for Sex Beyond the Grave. A woman is assaulted and murdered during World War II. 40 years later, she returns to haunt her persecutors at the Tao Tao Mansion. A young family has moved into the house and the spirits take away the young boy. And then the blurb continues. With plentiful rotting flesh, a flying refrigerator, and one of the longest strip teasers ever committed to celluloid, this truly insane entry in Shaw Brothers' catalogue must be seen to be believed. With a title that truly lives up to its name, it actually doesn't, but that's okay. And that striptease is incredibly spectacular. That woman is a gymnast and an acrobat, a contortionist. The striptease, even though it is quite long, she is incredibly flexible. Let's just put it that way. I've seen a lot of striptease acts in my day, but this one is as energetic as it gets. That's not quite true, but I'm not going to tell you why. Sex Beyond the Grave is the maddest of the three in some ways. You can argue between the second one and the third one, which is maddest, but there's a lot of horror in this one that just comes out of nowhere. The extras are audio commentary by author Dylan Chung from 2025, Grave Encounters, academic and author Victor Fun on Sex Beyond the Grave from 2025, and the original opening title sequence. So all three of these movies are crazy. They're just full on. They're just unexpected. Even though I have told you something of the movies, there are going to be moments if you watch these films where you're going to go, what the hell just happened? And you got to love a movie like that. Movies that give you that extra and give you that unexpectedness and then just suddenly, bam, cut to the credits are a lot of fun. I enjoyed the hell out of watching these three. Movies I'd seen from the 70s and 80s that were Hong Kong cinema were mostly wuxia movies, and then later on things like Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain and Dr. Y and the Scripture Without Words, and kind of higher level movies than this. These movies never got a cinematic release where I live. I'm glad they're being released now. And this is the volume 1 of Shaw Brothers Horror. I want to see volume 2. I want to see what else there is. I know there are other movies that have been released in the Shawscope series and other series like that, which came from Shaw Brothers and are horror. But these ones are as wild as the Troma film, or as wild as Blood-Sucking Freaks or something like that, but coming from a totally different cultural context. And they are delightful to an exploitation cinema fan like myself. Totally love them, totally enjoyed them. Want to see more. And I've gone down a rabbit hole of researching Hong Kong horror films of the 1980s. And there's a lot more out there, particularly from Shaw Brothers. I'm sorry if my glasses keep reflecting in the screen in front of me. I already recorded this video previously, but I've now had to re-record it because the footage got lost. I recommend this one, even though Imprint didn't send it to me. I'm looking forward to the second volume of this. Fantastic films, fantastic horror, totally different viewpoint than horror films coming from America or England or Europe. And they're fun. So I recommend them highly. You should get them. You should enjoy them. You should just go for the roller coaster ride they are. So that's what I got for you this time around. These three movies, fantastic box set, been reduced in price on the Imprint website. I'll post a link in the description of the video. And all the usual things. Give me a thumbs up, give it a like, hit the notification bell, subscribe, leave a comment and let me know whether you've seen these movies and whether you like them or whether you want to see these movies, because they are just mad films and just mad cinema, and I am definitely there for that. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Next up, we've got Science Fiction Saturday, and I've got one classic American science fiction movie and one classic movie that's not an American science fiction movie. So until all of that stuff happens, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some incredibly mad Hong Kong horror movies with a little bit of naughtiness about them. And I'll catch you next time.